Hey yo, this is DJ Carl at KPSS, broadcasting from the base of the once beautiful Hollywood Hills. Like most weeks here at KPSS, this week is Fiddle Week, when all of my airtime will be spent luxuriating in my small but mighty collection of fiddle tunes. So, I'd encourage you to sit back and enjoy the folksy, gutsy sound of bygone fiddlers. And if you don't like what you hear, just a reminder that I don't take visitors at the station. A simple postcard will suffice. That said, enjoy the fiddle.
Come along with us on an idle ride through the latest science fiction and fantasy shows, movies, and video games. Welcome to Idle Ride. I'm Marcy, your host, here with my co-host and chosen brother, Paul.
My name's Paul.
And today we welcome back producer John. He specifically requested this episode. So welcome, John.
Thank you. It's great to be back. It's good to see you guys again. And
good
here to talk some Fallout.
All right. So I was really curious what made you specifically want to talk about this episode?
So I think this episode probably is on everybody's list as the worst episode of the series or the season, or just because I've heard it described as like mid-season bloat at the end of a season.
Really?
And just more side character than not. I really enjoy it because I think it is. Well, we have characters in certain places and we need to get them to other places.
Right.
And we have these characters in between. Like, why not give Thaddeus his due? Like, he's obviously they have bigger plans for Thaddeus. I mean, they're setting up for another season. They have to do the lifting here. You know, they don't have the luxury of Marvel mid-credit scenes to set up later things to come in the series. This is Fallout. This isn't comic books. Like, some people know what to expect, but there isn't a lore. And so this is lore building. This is, we get to see more of just the wasteland as the wasteland operates without the main character's involvement. We see lead farmers in NCR armor. We get to see one of the radio DJs, no matter who plays him and what issues I might have with that actor. I really just enjoy the space that they give this episode to exist.
What a beautiful answer.
Yeah, and I agree 100% that in my mind, I was actually like, it's really fun to hang out with these side characters because it's not like we don't get to see the main characters.
Yeah.
So, and Norm is one of my favorites, and he is, in my mind, like a sub-main character.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, he has a really interesting and cool storyline that's obviously very important to what's going to happen in the next season. Anyway, so I totally agree.
I think Norm was the surprise audience favorite nobody expected to see coming. They're like, oh, you know who's kind of cool? The really short brother who stayed in the vault. Like, this poor guy is going through hell. Like, yeah.
Like the nerdy brother.
Yeah.
Who knew? They're so cool. I mean, I think part of it is because they're both, Lucy and Norm, are nerds in the same way. They're brave but nerdy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's kind of how she is. She's brave but nerdy. She's a little like more attractive, I guess. She's like the main character, but like still, it's funny to see that you can tell that they're brother and sister, even though you don't actually see a lot of brother-sister moments except from the very first episode. But they build that relationship so well in that first episode that you can still see that they're related.
And I don't want to jump ahead to all my notes, but this episode especially highlights, we haven't seen them together since the first episode. And there are assumptions being made about Vault 33 by people who have not been in Vault 33.
True.
Yeah.
Anything that you want to add, Paul?
My theory was that this episode had musical production stuff that John wanted to talk about, specifically artifacts in sound.
Oh.
I did really like that.
All right, well, let's get started with the beginning of the episode. We start with the Ghoul, who, if everyone remembers, in the previous episode, had gotten a flyer off of I can't remember the mob boss's name's wall, but he saw that it was Moldaver, and now we know he's searching for her because he's also searching for the head, right? And this is like a really good opening scene. It's actually not the ghoul that you first see, but again, Paul and I can't say it enough. These scenes of like wastelands and landscapes are what I love. Like the drone shots basically above of this like just tan, ugly wasteland with a couple of people metal detecting. And I'm glad that you earlier mentioned, because I was like, it looks like they're in NCR uniforms. And I guess I did see that they were NCR uniforms because John just mentioned them earlier in the opening.
Yeah, when watching this opening scene, and I'm glad you went back and said it actually doesn't start with the ghoul. My first minute of watching it is like, I don't know if I've seen this episode. Panic attack. Am I rewatching or did I miss something?
Yeah, there's a couple of scenes that I don't remember.
Yeah, I think this series balanced really well the game fan service versus just the we need to build a television world. They do plenty of game fan service, and this costume, I mean, this was the cover of Fallout New Vegas. This is one of the covers. Is this the guy in this outfit holding a gun up? I'm like, they're almost like all he needs to do is pose looking toward the camera and holding a gun, and he's doing a cover of a video game, but it doesn't feel shoehorned. It doesn't feel forced. It's like, no, these guys, this is what they wear. They're lead farmers. They're out there doing what they can.
And as lead farmers, it's kind of funny because the only interaction we saw between the two, like one was showing the metal detector, the other was like poop scoop in the sand. And they pull out like one bottle cap and they're like, yes.
Yep.
Yep. So we find out that it's a dad and a son. They get back to their farm and they're taking their uniforms off. And I was like, oh my God, I suddenly recognized the dad. I was like, this is the guy from Chips in the 70s. This is Eric Estrada.
Yep.
I was like, what the fuck is he doing in a Fallout game? Because I was like, I know this guy is from Chips, and I had to look up his name, but it was so
great.
funny.
So he like retires from the California Highway Patrol, the nukes go off, and then he has to...
Yep. Joins the new California
become a lead
Republic.
farmer.
Yeah.
So it's a dad and his son, and they walk into their house, and the ghoul is creepy as fuck, just like sitting at their table. It's very westerny. It's very the good and the bad and the ugly. He's sitting there and he's eating.
Which ones of good, bad, and ugly would you say the ghoul falls under? Definitely ugly.
Boy.
I think he's Angel Eyes at this point right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Because there's a scene with Angel Eyes that is actually this exact scene in Good and Bad and the Ugly where he's in this family's home. So I think it's actually a direct reference to this.
Okay, cool.
And he's eating chili, disgustingly, sort of like the ghoul is. And this family is like, we'll tell you anything. It's a Mexican family. And he ends up like killing the whole family afterwards, after he gets his information for Clint Eastwood.
Gotcha.
Because they're all looking for the money
Right.
in that
Yeah.
movie, right? They really like in this show to show people eating disgustingly.
Yeah. It is a classic Western scene. I was like, oh, this is also like the scene they're filming in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood with like, oh, is the daughter being threatened or not? She's, the innocent not realizing what's going on and then being sent out to play. It's like, yeah, this is very like Tarantino loves this kind of scene. And it's a classic scene.
I have a Kill Bill note. Got it.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, so dad and son arrive. Dad's immediately freaked out. He recognizes the ghoul and he's like, where's Sandra? You assume that he thinks he's literally eating Sandra based off of his reaction.
But anyone who has even a bare glance at the meal, like how long were they away for her to make such a nice looking food out of a daughter?
Oh, is the ghoul they, them? Maybe.
Yeah.
No, how long were the dad and the son away for him to make a whole meal out of her?
Yeah. I mean, you never know with the ghoul. It could just not even be cooked. But she arrives and gives him more food, and the ghoul like laughs and it's like, oh, you thought I was like eating her, kind of with his gestures. Basically, the ghoul talks about how he has a son named Rufus who is working for Moldaver, and he's focused then on Tommy next because he knows that Tommy is also working with Rufus, who's working with Moldaver.
Oh, you mean Timothy Chalamet?
Or Too Late Tommy, like from The Last of Us. Yeah. I was like, another Tommy brother.
And he doesn't make it because he's too slow.
That's true. So the dad is basically like, tell the ghoul what he wants to know because he's going to murder all of us. But I do have a little clip from that scene with the son.
So what you think, Tommy? Am I really walking out of here today, or are you going to try and draw on me for what I did to your big brother?
He murdered his brother.
He won't. Maybe not today, but maybe someday.
Tommy did tell him that Moldaver was in the observatory, and we see that Tommy's a fucking idiot and pulls on the ghoul.
And really, I'm like, man, was Tommy thinking about drawing on the ghoul until the ghoul said that? Did the ghoul prime him to go for the gun? Like, I could see it going either way with the ghoul. I like that he's not a good guy who has to do bad. I was like, no, he's kind of a bad guy who sometimes has to do good.
Yeah, I agree with that assessment, at least right now. Like, he's kind of reevaluating, but it's not to the point to, like, have any kind of scruples about anything.
Yep.
Look, you guys don't know. Tommy was going to be a really hard boss fight later, but he's played this before.
Oh, that's a good point, Paul, that he's done this script in his life many times and just knows.
The scene ends with him taking the anti-feral chems, which I know you guys have mentioned before. Like, this is a new thing.
The ghoul asthma inhaler?
Yeah, the asthma inhaler. But like, ghoul asthma. This is not anywhere in the game, right? Yes, non-feral ghouls can turn feral in the games. That's been established as you don't just immediately turn feral necessarily, but it's never been said anywhere that it can be held off with drugs, right?
Well, we've discussed, Paul and I are trying to figure out this drug, when it is taken and when it's not taken, because it seems to me that some ghouls, even though they're not taking the drug, are still holding off becoming feral.
Right.
And some are better than others at doing it. So I am very confused by the ghoul drug. I don't understand how it works. And I feel like the next season, one of Thaddeus's storylines is probably going to show us more about that.
Yeah.
But
if they need a tip, they could totally take this from me and retcon it in, and then it'll make sense. You know how people with ADHD can take basically meth and it calms them down, whereas neurotypical brains, it amps them up. So going feral, take Jet and it calms them down. Boom, done.
I mean, it sure looks like Jet is what he's hitting at the end of that scene.
I'm really curious as to where this goes because, for example, the scene with Lucy and all the ferals that were in the refrigerators, granted, they did have a bunch of drugs there, but it seemed like everybody was at a different level of feralness.
Like it's progressive and can be stopped at whatever stage you want it to.
Yeah, it's weird. I agree, John. I don't understand it. It's not part of the games at all. Yeah. I just always assumed, this is my own headcanon, but every time you kill a feral in Fallout 4, they have some memento. And that their memento wasn't enough to keep them staying sane over the many hundreds of years. Whereas the ghoul currently has a reason to not go feral, an internal motivation. I feel like if you were turning into a desiccated, horrible, disgusting thing, it'd be kind of hard even after hundreds of years to want to stay living, or have stuff to live for.
I like that.
So the next scene is the ghoul is walking into the wasteland. I kind of thought I saw like a look of regret a little bit, but then it was just became a look of like determination. And as he's walking, there's a voiceover of Moldaver from the 1950s. And so then they kind of transition into Cooper Howard sitting at Moldaver's little communist talk that she's giving. In the very beginning, she starts talking about the promise of the American dream. So I wanted to ask you guys what you remember as a child, the American dream being, because I feel like that's sort of where some Americans are right now. We do have this idea of the American dream that's just a cultural thing.
Yep.
What do you remember the American dream to be?
I could give a more personal answer to this. Among the shit that I have accumulated in several lifetimes of family junk coming to me was something that I wrote when I was around 8 years old. And it was this long timeline of my life. So it had like, born on the left side, like, preschool at whatever age, me now at 8, and then it projected, and it was like at 20, I would have a PhD and I would be a veterinarian and I'd have a wife, and like at 25, I'd have 5 kids.
Damn.
Did any of those things happen, Paul?
I did graduate college.
Yeah. And so far, 7 kids have come forward, right, Paul?
As of the time of this recording.
Yeah. We're watching a show based around the threat of communism, which is what all 3 of us grew up in. It was the waning years of the threat of communism, but I mean, the Russians were the enemy, the commies were the enemy. It was a thing we heard, and so it was, you're gonna grow up, you're gonna go to school, you're gonna get a good job, you're gonna have a family and a house and a dog and a yard. I mean, it was a pack of lies already by that point. There were already a group of people who were working on dismantling all the promise that held, starting the year before I was born, at least, if not earlier. And so, it
One
was.
Could say Citizens United, and
I mean, it was
70s.
Yeah. It was definitely a well manufactured story that we were told to expect, and that we were told would give us success and happiness in life. So the American dream was very well sold to us as kids.
Yeah. So I guess I have a somewhat personal story too. My idea of it just comes down to one idea, which is like, you can do anything that you set your mind to in the United States. Like, if you just pull yourself up from your bootstraps. And certainly I feel like I've been able to go through life and do the things that I've wanted to do. But I remember having this conversation with my dad because I had read, like, I think it was like Freakonomics or something that talked about like economy and how, it is very difficult to move from one level of economy to like the highest level. Like, very few people do that. And talking to my dad and having to explain to him, like, not everybody has the same benefits. Like, I was white. I had white parents that showed me how to go into a bank and set up a checking account. I had white parent friends who supported me and taught me all the things that I needed to do to become economically stable. And if you're poor, like, some poor people have never even stepped foot into a bank and would maybe be kicked out of the bank if they went into one, thinking that they were trying to steal from it or something, because of the prejudice of our country. And like having this conversation with him and being like, low class to like high class is a very difficult jump to make. And my dad finally kind of figuring it out. I'm like, not everybody also is as smart as other people, and they just can't do certain things, and that's okay. That's one thing that I love about my dad. He'll think about what I've said, and after a couple days, he's like, okay, Marcy, I remember what you told me about this, and actually take it in. But like his generation, they were given everything pretty much. Not to shit on the boomer generation, because everybody does, but they were able to experience that dream in a way that no one's ever going to be able to experience it again, right?
And I get it. I know my parents from the same thing, but it's like, they experienced it, and then they said, nobody else gets to.
Yeah.
Nobody else gets
deliberately.
to. Yeah, very deliberately.
Also, it was very racial then, too, and not every boomer got this.
Yeah.
Right.
And so they're denying it from their own generation, too.
Yeah.
So this is what Moldaver is trying to talk about in this speech that she's giving. And Cooper has been given the Kool-Aid, I guess, and he kind of buys into a lot of this, and was in the military, and so he thinks he deserves a certain amount of respect because of that.
And he fought in a war specifically against, it was Russia, right?
China,
so,
yeah.
It was China.
Communists.
Yeah, just communists in general at this point in the, 2070? Yeah. So
my father, spent a decade at least in Alaska, sometimes coming home and like telling about how like the Russians were prodding our airspace again. And so like he lived this perpetual vigilance of like terror that the commies are going to take over Alaska. So I can sort of see that paranoia feeding into like, well, I'm protecting the American dream. And if I don't have that, what do I have?
Yeah. So he gets pissed and he's like, this is all about all the horse shit I can take. And he starts walking off. And Moldaver's like, what did you just say? And I love this scene because she confronts him. And, a normal person might just like pretend they said something else. But he's like, I said, this is about all the horse shit I can take. And so there's this really funny back and forth between the two where, the audience, they did a good job, again, of even making this a very serious, intense moment kind of silly, where the people, like, there at the meeting, every time Moldaver talks, they turn their head to Moldaver, and every time Cooper talks, they turn their head to him. So it was kind of fun that they did that. And so, of course, she's repeating these lines we've heard before, like, a lot of money in selling the end of the world, and he tells her that she's basically selling an ideology as well. And
in his response, he sounds confident, but the words that she said were definitely like they echoed what he had been arguing with his wife a bit. And I think that's why he stuck around to argue. And if she had said, like, I bet they won't even let dogs in the vault, like that would have probably won him right there.
Yep.
So true. That's the only fucking thing he cares about. He's so us in that moment. And his response to her saying she knows his wife, I was shocked that he didn't just immediately like try to murder her, because to me it's kind of almost a threat against your wife, but he instead takes it for how the show wanted him to take it, which is that what do you know about my wife? It wasn't that I didn't know where they wanted me to go with it. It was more that the motivation for Cooper Howard is kind of that hyper-masculine motivation. And usually a hyper-masculine man is going to be like, don't you threaten my wife or talk about my wife like that.
Okay, but maybe his sexism fought that and was like, a woman wouldn't threaten my wife to me.
Okay. So my little bit of too independent woman is coming out in this moment. So they do like a walk and talk in the hallway, and I think you wanted me to get a clip for this, Paul. So this is a clip from that scene, but initially Moldaver kind of tells him that she's been working on cold fusion, and Vault-Tec has bought all of her research. So this is the scene right in that area.
How do you know my wife?
My research company was acquired by her division. We were developing this kind of technology that's difficult to monetize. Cold fusion, infinite energy. That's what I was on the verge of achieving when Vault-Tec swept in and bought up every company I'd ever worked for.
Every one of them? So what are you, a millionaire communist?
Hypocrisy is like violence in your movies. If you only let the bad guys use it, the bad guys win.
Yeah, I got a little showbiz secret for you. A good bad guy doesn't see themselves as a bad guy.
America has been locked in a resource war for over a decade. Vault-Tec bought the means to end that war. The same war you fought in. So they could put it on the shelf?
So I guess the thing that I thought was interesting about that is, yes, she's just saying whatever words is going to work on him. Like, she's definitely trying to be maximally persuasive. And, like, you can at least at this point give her the benefit of the doubt that, like, she truly believes that Vault-Tec didn't want good things to happen to people. If the cold fusion thing is true, which I guess we'll know in next episode, you know, she's really trying to, like, argue her side. But I just love that hypocrisy is like violence. And then him being like, well, bad guys always think they're good. Like, that very much fits in with arguments happening even today in our public discourse.
Yeah. And if you want to know more about the resource war America is locked in, read The Prize by Daniel Yergin. It's an excellent book.
Book plug.
Right after that moment where she's talking to Cooper, I think she just like randomly pulls out this like listening device. Like she doesn't even ease into it at all.
No. Also, that means she's ready to give out listening devices no matter what, because unless she was told Cooper Howard was coming to this meeting, which I'm sure she's been pushing for, like obviously, but she is ready for the minute he shows up to one of these meetings.
Just giving away spy gear.
Yep.
Yeah, right? I love that it's all kind of big and bulky like you would expect from like the 50s.
Yeah.
So it's a listening device. Cooper kind of looks reluctant to take it, but does take it. And I do feel like Moldaver definitely makes you feel like she's one smart lady.
Mm. Yeah.
And this whole sequence. And also, I feel like Cooper, when he's in the hall, he's put his hat on and he suddenly looks like Nick Valentine from Fallout 4.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
I was like, oh, they're pulling some like Nick Valentine detective vibes here, especially like with the listening device being incorporated into all of that. But the next cut is to Maximus and Lucy, and we're back in Vault 4. And Birdie and Overseer Benjamin are interrogating Lucy kind of in a two-way mirror again. She's stuck in her room. She's calling them sick, like they're horrible people. And Birdie's like, show her the holotape. They bring up the holotape, and it's a video of the man that we saw from the original commercial that Cooper Howard did of Vault 4. One of the Hawthorns, and it turns out he's the overseer of that vault. And he is trying to explain why, even though this failed, giving scientists unregulated control is not a bad idea. And he says a statement like, hybridizing radioactive resistant species with humans was still a good idea. Don't stop doing this. And then a gulper breaks through their door and mows down on the scientists.
Yeah. And they're obviously setting up for Deathclaw, right? They're laying the crumbs now. And I will say this. They got to have a Deathclaw episode in season 2. They got to show up because they hint at him already in season 1. I hope that episode is just an hour of them running from a Deathclaw. That's no. You don't get the best of these things. You run if you want to live. It is just a vicious, unending Michael Myers version of a Deathclaw, just nonstop pursuing them.
Somebody gets fucked up by it.
It'll just show us how horrible these things are, because what's the first thing you do when you surprise encounter Deathclaw? You run. You try and get space between you to do something. So
you find a spot to glitch out and then you hit it from there.
Exactly. Yep.
Man, I had not really made that connection that Deathclaws are just mutated humans. I'd always thought that they would have been a radioactive, some other kind of beast. So this vault really gives you food for thought about what it could be. Maybe I missed something in the games. You're coming at this from something from the games, John, or just
a little bit because Deathclaws have never had. They're not like Yaogwai where it's this is a bear. They're not like roaches or mole rats where we can tell where this came from. I think Deathclaws have always been sort of this came from something, but obviously this could also be the flip side of the FEV and super mutants. There are two things that are missing from this season that I think people were hoping to see, and that was super mutants and Deathclaws.
Well, in Fallout 2, there's actually a vault that has gotten taken over by Deathclaws that can talk, and you as the protagonist actually do missions for them and stuff. So it's not a bad idea. I'm curious now. And by the way, we know there's going to be a Fallout Season 2, and Fallout won Best Game Adaptation at the Game Awards.
Oh, sweet.
So congratulations,
yeah,
Fallout.
Congratulations, guys.
Nice.
Because we've been talking about Season 2 a lot. So it's so that's really interesting. And, I forgot that Lucy learns that Benjamin is an ancestor of the ones that were being experimented on. And then it's not in this scene, but like in a later scene, he mentions that his great
Uncle Peter.
Yeah.
Uncle Peter
On his
Was that
mom's
gulper,
side.
yeah.
there you go, was the gulper that ate them. And I'm like, who's fucking these gulpers
Right.
to make like
Yeah.
human like gulper humans?
I think, though, Marcy, that confirms your fishy adaptation theory.
Yeah.
Yes. She suddenly backpedals and is like, wow, you were actually trying to help those people. Like, I'm not a bad person. Like, I didn't mean to attack you guys. I thought you were doing it. And there is one line in this that I did want to pull because it's specific to some of the experiment stuff that we've been talking about. So let's listen to that.
I'm so sorry. I had no idea the original vault while I was here was so weird. I mean, my vault's not like this.
What was the experiment in 33?
Well, there is no experiment.
Your ignorance cannot excuse your cruelty. You have infected our home with violence, and now you must pay the price.
If only she knew.
Yeah, I guess this is for people who have never played Fallout. Like, this has got to be kind of a, okay, we're laying out the breadcrumbs, the clues, like the eyes that Benjamin and Bertie give each other when she's like, there is no experiment in my vault.
She should have just said cousin stuff.
Yeah.
And I feel like Lucy has over and over again surprised me with her astuteness in certain situations where normally with a female character, they would make her be way more naive, but like, you know, not trusting Maximus when he's in the armor, like lots of scenes like this where she's seen actually being smart in the survival sense. In this scene, it's kind of funny how she's just still doesn't pick up. Like, she's still got that little bit of like, my vault is a good vault. People in my vault are good. And she can't let go of that idea that there could be something sinister about her own home.
Yeah.
So they bag and drag her out of the room through the hallways. And good old Max is sitting in his chair, still chowing down on popcorn, and sees her getting taken away. And I'm not sure if you noticed this, but I felt like this actor did a really great job in this scene of having him actually kind of like think about, do I want to do something about this?
Hey, it's his first time having what looks like really good popcorn. Any popcorn lover would be like, yeah, you gotta ask yourself, is this worth putting the popcorn down for or not?
And then you see it in his face, the look of determination where he decides that he's going to help her and the resolve. I consistently have been like annoyed by this character, but I feel like the actor has like such a dynamic range where you're like, are you a child or a sinister villain? I can't figure it out.
Even throughout this whole episode, it's like, man, are you naive or are you kind of jaded? Like,
who are you?
All I'm saying is if he didn't grab that one last handful after making a decision, handful of popcorn, I would have been very mad.
Yeah, exactly. Good popcorn, man.
Yeah. Well, and like the previous episode where he's like, but they gave me slippers and a robe. And I'm like, yes, like, could you imagine never having anything soft in your entire life and then like wearing a soft laundered robe? It must have been blissful, you know? And then again, these side characters. So the next scene is with Thaddeus, and I fucking love Thaddeus. Like every character, even if they're kind of a subplot character, is good. Like you're invested in them. So Thaddeus has the head, and he's still carrying that ginormous Brotherhood bag.
Overloaded.
And
Over encumbered. I mean, yep.
Yep. There you go. I like that.
Especially with that leg damage.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So he's like step dragging because he's got a fucked up foot still If you remember from the last episode, Maximus stepped on his foot with his power armor. And Dogmeat is following him because he has the head still. Dogmeat is like jumping up on the bag and pulling on it and being really annoying. And then he stops at a Red Rocket gas station.
Hell yeah.
So if all of you remember, in Fallout 4, the Red Rocket gas station is like your number 2 if you're following the actual storyline location that you find. And it's just like kind of an iconic location, I feel like, for Fallout.
Oh yeah, and there's what, like 6 of them in that game? That first one you find, because it's one of the first places after Sanctuary Hills you set up a settlement at, and my settlement there is huge compared to some of the other ones out there. So yeah, it was good to see it. Very good design. Apparently it's the same gas station set they used at the beginning of John Wick. So yeah,
what?
When he like goes and finds his car, like when they see the car and they're like, oh, it's a nice one. So again, somebody looking for their dog, not being happy about their dog, like leading to killing a bunch of people. So
I love it. So Thaddeus takes a little break and he pulls his boot off.
I'm gonna fucking die.
No.
As a person in the healthcare field, I don't think he would have been able to get his boot off. Like, his foot would be so swollen. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen somebody who's injured themselves. Like, even if you barely hurt yourself, your arm can swell up. But he's able to get it off and, like, it's like, it gives me the heebie-jeebies. Just like when he did it, I had to turn away. Again, there's several scenes in this show that I can't observe for more than like half a second.
The way his big toe is mostly detached.
Well,
that's so gross.
And they don't show it, but it later on he has his boot and sock back on because he takes them off again for the Snake Oil Salesman. So he was able to pull a sock and boot back over his foot. Like,
I put that in my notes. Like, he
stim
should
packs
not
are amazing.
have been able to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really curious about his pain tolerance because they don't show him taking any kind of medications. And so, damn, I mean,
what kind of hazing do they do in the Brotherhood?
I mean, that's the thing is like Marcy said, he's never known anything but a hard life. So he's like, I'm gonna fucking die, but I gotta keep walking. I gotta try and get this message out. So
yeah. So Dogmeat, survival mode, he's just like, minced meat. Nom, 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 starts trying to eat his foot, and he's like, hey, get away. And like, he starts talking to Dogmeat as he's deciding that he can't carry this huge bag. So he takes out a fusion core from the bag and puts it in his chest area, like in his shirt, and then stuffs his giant bag in the trunk of some random car. And he's got the head kind of wrapped up in like a rucksack. And he's like, what am I gonna do with you, Dogmeat?
I want to see this illustrated as a child's book, but with Marcy's voicings. What are we going to do with you, Dogmeat?
And then he sees this, like, cooler. And I'm like, Dogmeat, what are you doing? Like, don't let him do this to you. He goes up to it and he's like, yeah, I'm just going to put you in here so you don't follow me anymore. And he puts Dogmeat in the cooler and shuts the door. And I'm like, Dogmeat, kill the motherfucker! Take the head! Like, what are you doing? Oh.
You could at least be like the dog in To Build a Fire and run away.
Oh my God.
At least he is, he's like, you can breathe in there, right? You're okay?
Like, he does do that.
He doesn't want to hurt.
He's like, oh, you got a little
Dogmeat.
window so you can look out.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to hurt him, John. He's going to let him starve to death in a cooler?
Well, he wants to come back for the bag. Yeah. So maybe he's like, this dog could be useful for the Brotherhood, but not me.
I don't know. This moment was hard for me, but probably worse when I first watched it. But since I knew that he was going to get rescued in the same episode, I'm totally fine with it.
Marcy stance on consequentialism.
Like, if I had seen that happen, once again, I would be like the dog whisperer in the wasteland. And I would have immediately murdered Thaddeus, taken all of his stuff, and rescued the dog and made it mine. Because there is multiple dogs in Fallout 4 that you can find. You find a dog handler, and so you can have dog meat, but you can also get this other like pit bull looking dog from the dog handler. So anyway that I can get dogs or pets in a game, I'll do it.
So in a future Fallout, you should just open a refrigerator and there'd be a dog there. And like, how did you get there, dog?
Oh, yeah. A Nuka-Cola dispenser for sure.
Cool.
Yeah.
That'd be so awesome. That's going to make me check every single fucking cooler in the next Fallout game, just in case there's a dog in there. We return to Vault 4, and Birdie has Lucy all tied up, and she's in front of this huge crowd. She's definitely at their mercy, bowed before them.
The crowd is eating popcorn.
Yep. Yeah. More popcorn.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Benjamin, the overseer, pulls out this huge ass scimitar. And I was like, is this a weapon I missed in the games? But
it's usually
I don't
machetes.
think there was ever...
I think most of the time it's a machete or a ripper or something like that. So, yeah.
Yeah, no scimitars. But I'm wondering if in a future game there'll be a scimitar.
Yeah. Dull scimitar. Yeah.
They do a really hilarious kind of bait and switch here where it's like this huge production and they're doing a big build up and he's like, I'm going to sentence you. And she thinks she's going to get killed. Banishment to the surface. And then he just starts sawing at her bonds. And she's like, what the fuck?
The symbolic bonds. The ceremonial bonds of safety that you have shattered.
And then Birdie does this like big speech and they're like, and before you leave, you get 2 weeks of wonderful supplies. So Lucy's just like, oh, okay, like this is obviously not a punishment. And then Maximus is very determined. He goes back to the reactor core and steals the fusion core, puts it in his power armor.
I think it's worth noting that before he starts doing this, Lucy's trying to argue a case for why Maximus should get to stay.
Yeah, it's like, please let him stay. You guys are wonderful. This is amazing. And he goes and steals their power supply. Yeah.
And there's a really cool scene of the power armor. Again, It would be really easy to make the power armor look chintzy and foamy, but the sound effects, the way the guy walks in it, it just looks so cool as he's like walking down the hallway getting ready to save her. So Max arrives and he thinks he's doing a good deed and he's like starts attacking everybody,
smashing people across the room, flipping the popcorn stand.
And I have the clip from this because I thought it was a really funny scene.
Titus, stop! They're letting me go.
Really?
Yeah.
Oops. Sorry. Somebody maybe check on him?
The groan.
Yeah. I love how innocent he sounds. This is again where you're just like, who are you, Max? Because he's like, oh, really? Sorry, everybody. It's in this scene, like, whenever she calls him Titus, I keep forgetting that he still hasn't told her his real name, which is going to be a thing in this episode. They kind of just let them
smash
go.
cut to them outside. I love that there isn't anything after that besides, yep, now they're outside.
The elevator.
Yeah. Just get out.
The elevator,
just be gone.
Yeah. And we have another clip for this of Lucy trying to convince Max that maybe we should give the fusion core back. So let's listen to that.
What?
We stole their fusion core.
Well, yeah, but... You know, I needed it for the armor.
I need it.
Well, without their fusion core, their auxiliary power will only last a few days. And then what?
No.
Yes.
No.
Giving it back is the right thing to do.
Without the fusion core, this armor is useless. I can't be a knight.
Well, you can't be a knight by stealing from people either.
Yeah, but I can help people with this armor. All right? You, for example, I want to help you. You really want to give them their fusion core back if it means you don't get your dad?
If my dad found out that I destroyed an entire community to save him, that'd break his heart. I can't.
So I have it in my head. I just can't get over the idea that there's this community of people who live down in that vault. They've just lost their fusion core. They're on auxiliary power. There's a guy in power armor that they've probably never seen before. They're like, okay, just go, take everything. Okay, what the fuck are we gonna do? We have like a couple days to figure out. And they're up there arguing the same thing. It's like, it's just so like, it was a cult down there, yes, but they were so naive and kind in ways that like we didn't even understand until we found out that they were taking care of the women who were impregnated by the people in the past. And yeah, they almost got dicked over, but luckily there was another kind vault dweller.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting about that vault is that you've got the overseer Benjamin, who is kind of naive because they've never really been out of the vault. And then you've got Birdie, and they obviously share power. Mm-hmm. And like Birdie is from the surface. And we kind of thought about whether or not she was actually the descendant last episode of the courier from New Vegas, because she talks about her mother being the courier. I feel like she is tough. Mm-hmm. But she values this vault's original secondary mission now that they are like, we need to protect people from vault tech and from being experimented on. And so they kind of came together. And this scene with the fusion core and Lucy and Max is Max needs it because like survival and all these things he's been taught. And so it's against everything that he's ever been taught to give up tech, first of all, because of brotherhood, but also something that can protect you from everything in the wasteland. But she convinces him because vagina.
Also, I would just like to point out that if you can power a whole vault on the same power source as a brotherhood armor, that armor is really wasting that power.
Power armor wastes power like crazy, but it's doing a lot of stuff. I mean, you can jump from literally any height and take no damage. So, in fact, you can inflict damage with it. So, yeah.
Real life, as you talked about in the previous episode, power armor takes so much energy that it's impossible to actually have power armor right now as like a standalone thing. We just can't create batteries that are big enough.
Yeah. That's the only thing. Like, we have literally every other piece of technology to make power armor except for a power source. Like,
it's true.
Yeah. Exactly.
And that's why it sucks.
Yeah.
So it's really sweet. They go back to the hospital and re-deliver the fusion core to Vault 4. As they're walking out, Lucy starts kind of describing all the yummy stuff in her vault, and she tells him that he's a good person, and she invites him to her vault. And this is where he finally confesses to her that he's Max. So I do have that clip as well.
There's something I should tell you.
Just say yes.
My name isn't Titus, it's Maximus. Titus is the name of the knight who owned this suit before me. He was threatening me, so instead of helping him, I watched him die. And I took his armor, and I lied to you. So all that stuff you're saying, you know, about me being a good person.
I just threw acid in an innocent man's face. And I've only been up here 2 weeks. The wasteland sucks.
Yeah, sometimes.
I like you.
Do you want to come live with me in my vault?
Aw.
Yeah. Yeah, of course.
crunch noises.
Let's go find that head.
I really like that they've solidified their friendship, whereas before I think they were a little bit untrusting of each other still. And now, since he decided not to stay for popcorn, they've finally gotten that trust in each other.
Yeah. And I think a very important omission of truth was solved there when she said that they don't have oysters at hers, but tuna. They have tuna, and that's good enough.
Great. I'll take her vault over the other one any day. Canned oysters are disgusting. Canned tuna, awesome. So I am fully on the Vault 33 train here.
I love how she knows already, like, the way to get him to come with her is, like, to talk about all the yummy things that they have in their vault. Like, I'm not enough. I have to make sure he knows it's going to be really comfortable there.
Also, I don't think she's being sly or deceptive, but she really gave him an opening for, like, look, I'm telling a not truth if I don't tell you about the lack of this food that you like. Now you can give me something.
I'm not who you think I am,
It's fun because I think she's a little bit emotionally more mature than him in some of these social interactions because she grew up with people who she at least thought cared about her. And so she has the ability to be social in a way that he's never had because he's just been surviving. Yeah. So it's cute that she kind of helps him through these social moments. So Thaddeus is walking in the wasteland, and again, another really good scene sort of from up above, looking at all of the wasteland, and we hear DJ Fred Armisen, aka DJ Carl, at KPSS near Hollywood. So I wanted to take a second here to talk about Fallout and how all of the new games anyway tend to have DJs. Put a quiz online to see who everybody's favorite Fallout DJ was.
I think I can guess, but curious what people say.
And I think that, well, we didn't get very many responses, but the response we got is who I agree with. So for Fallout 3, there's Three Dog, and Three Dog's my favorite, and for the quiz, everybody said Three Dog. Yeah, Three Dog's pretty cool. And he's from Galaxy News Radio. And then from Fallout New Vegas, there's Mr. New Vegas from Radio New Vegas.
Yep, very Casey Kasem style, yep.
Got next Travis from Diamond City Radio, who's a little bit nervous and not the best DJ, but he gained some confidence from the Soul Survivor. And then I've never played this, but I know you have, John. I guess there's Julie, who is from Appalachia Radio and Fallout 76.
I didn't play enough 76 to encounter Julie, but yeah, I mean, Three Dog, GNR, Three Dog, all you need to know. Like, it's Three Dog, man.
Do you remember any of the DJs, Paul?
I definitely remember Three Dog, but I also turned off the radio whenever I was out because I felt like it was like, I'm trying to sneak here. I'm not going to be playing a radio. And the ambient
music in the Fallout games is so good. The atmospherics are amazing in those games. Yeah.
That's fine. I had to live a sneaker life.
Yeah.
I do think in Fallout 4, if your radio's on, you will be noticed faster.
I hadn't thought about that. I mean, the light for sure. Like, that one's a dead giveaway, but
I also overly play like stealth mechanics in games. Like, I know, like, in the older games, there's no mechanic for the radio. It was just a radio. But for me, from my immersion...
I love that, like, you're sneaking in gigantic fucking power armor. Yeah. like they wouldn't hear you going, dun, dun, dun.
Yep. But yeah, he's listening and following the strength of the signal, which, like, yeah, Daddy's a smart guy. He knows what he's supposed to do. He's a good squire.
I guess I'm just a fucking idiot because I'm like, why is he going to the radio anyway? Duh, you stupid idiot. Like, he's going to call the Brotherhood. But in my mind, I'm just like going along for the ride. I wasn't really even considering where he was going, you know? So he's dragging that bad foot it's bad. It looks like he's going to die. And then they do a different angle where you see somebody who's quite familiar. At first, it's sort of a silhouette. And then, like, you see a gun and trigger warning, suicide potential here. But the chicken fucker, he's back. And he's about to blow his own brains out. But then he sees Thaddeus and he's like, and he goes and grabs his Snake Oil Salesman briefcase and he's like, hello! I'm here and I'm a doctor. I did want to talk a little bit about the Snake Oil Salesman because that is what he's called in Fallout Shelter. And he doesn't really have a name I've been calling him the chicken fucker, but apparently he's just the Snake Oil Salesman. And I feel like this episode like highlights him the most. So I wanted to talk about the very first Snake Oil Salesman where you actually get that term. And his name was Clark Stanley, and he was really good at marketing his product for joint pain. Nobody really like knew about him until 1893 when he went to the Columbian Exposition in Chicago, and like lots of stuff got presented at the exposition. You know how in the old days they would have these huge meetings where inventors would come
World's Fairs and
World's Fairs and talk about their inventions. And this is the same convention where like Pabst Blue Ribbon was presented, like automated washers.
Yeah, just so you know, PBR has been riding that Blue Ribbon coattail since 1892.
Yeah.
Oh, it's also the Devil in the White City World's Fair. It's the H.H. Holmes serial killer World's Fair.
With the like maze hotel thing.
Yeah, that was mostly made up. Yeah.
It's just sadder than like all the restaurants that were like, we won an award in 2012.
Yeah.
Yeah, really. Good job, Pabst Blue Ribbon, for like keeping it strong for 200 years. So he was a very good salesman, a very good like theatrical person. So he literally like had a snake with him, a rattlesnake, and cut it open and boiled it and like, here's the oil from the snake. I learned from the Hopi tribe, which was all bullshit, about how it's like good for your joints. And they all ate it up, the audience. And so at some point, he actually had like 2 huge factories making this liniment. Snake oil liniment is what he called it. But then he was like, it's really hard to get the snakes for this. I'm just not even going to put snake in it anymore. And so he's making this snake oil liniment for like lots and lots of years. And back in that time, there was no regulatory process to let you know if like this was real or not. And because of all these like fake drugs that were legitimately like hurting people, the United States actually came up with the Pure Food and Drug Act in 1906. But even after that, he still was getting away with it because there was really like no way to regulate this act. And they created another way to actually regulate and captured and seized one of his shipments in 1917 and found no snake oil in it. And so they shut him down. But that's like almost 20 plus years that he got away with just like manufacturing something that didn't even have snake oil in it. And so that's where we got that term.
Yeah, that's cool. Did not know that.
I mean, what a crazy thing that for like almost 200 years, we have a term that means like you're going to try to cheat us with this product. It's lasted so long, and we've got another guy just right here. And it's kind of like his presentation is so much like that, like the liniment serum producer. It's so funny to me.
And if we want people not putting the actual product into the thing that they're saying, that's like, you know, a lot of Parmesan cheese is...
That's why I call it Parmigiano. That's why it doesn't say
fortified
Parmesan.
with sawdust. Yep. Like there's a huge black market on fake virgin olive oil. Like pretty much nothing you eat is probably what you think it is these days. And the FDA is not doing a good job.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard because it doesn't mean anything to have FDA really written on it, that it's safe by the Food and Drug Administration, because they're influenced by outside sources. So supplements are a huge industry that literally there's not a lot of science behind taking supplements, because often it won't have what it says it's supposed to have in it, or your body can't actually process it because it's like a hard pill and it's out of your body before it actually is digested, you know? So anyway, supplements. They're bullshit.
Yeah. The same is true for a lot of homeopathic remedies. Like they'll say, you know, there's duck liver in this, but even though the process statistically, mathematically removes any active ingredient, because it's you take 1 drop of water from the thing with whatever you want in it, and you do 1 drop into a liter, shake it up, 1 drop of that into a liter, do that 20 times, and that's supposed to be your homeopathic remedy. But yeah, we're not even going to use the duck liver. We're just going to do water, save some effort.
Oh yeah. Homeopathic remedies are the biggest piece of shit bullshit in the world, because they're actually removing the product that they said is what's good for you. Like you said, it's like, this is 1,000 parts of your dog's piss or something. And they'll be like, that'll cure your joint pain. And it's like, that means there's literally nothing in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, fucking Snake Oil Salesman!
Well, this one's got something real, because it works. I mean,
it did do something. Well, that was so shocking. So I have the chicken fucker clip. Well, not the chicken fucker clip, but a clip of the chicken fucker.
I've seen this condition before. Someone stepped on my foot. Yes, sometimes fatal. But you're in luck, because I've got the cure. I have in my possession serums and potions for every malady and misfortune that could possibly beset a wandering traveler such as yourself.
That was a gun.
What stopped me from just killing you, taking your whole thing of drugs? Well, when it comes to serums, not many people know the difference between the noxious and the benign. A murky hue of green could aid the humors, a brackish hint of shamrock, and... That's the sound of your lower intestine falling right the fuck out. But which is which? Which is which? Fine. Just give me the right one. Okay.
I love Thaddeus.
Yeah.
I think all these side characters are so good. These actors.
Yeah.
I think I'm being a little slow here, but I just realized that if Maximus didn't save the chicken fucker, then he'd be dead right now, and then Thaddeus would probably just die.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's true.
Good job fucking that chicken fucker.
Well, and then you realize in this same scene, he gives him the Ghoul inhaler, and it heals his foot. And so in the previous episode, I think episode 2, he was calling out to Linus, I have a foot healing serum, and he could have healed his foot.
Yeah, you're right.
So that was like super shocking to me that it actually worked. And of course, Thaddeus is like, oh, wow, okay. And he gives him his fusion core, gives the chicken fucker his fusion core to get the cure.
It's a hell of a trade. It's a valuable fusion core. Yeah. And then he drops that little comment about, well, you shouldn't have to worry about radiation. And then he's, boom, gone.
Yep.
Off to find more chickens. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so he mentions that the radio station is at Shady Sands, and Thaddeus is like, oh, I can't go there. It's super radioactive. And he's like, you don't have to worry about that anymore. And again, I love how they drop these clues. I mean, I'm sure I could have figured this out if I really wanted to think about it the first time I watched it, but I think I was like, I wonder why it did that. I mean, sometimes I'm pretty dense about things, I guess, but because I don't think we've ever actually seen the Ghoul's wounds heal up. It's only just been that he gets shot and he's okay. And he did take no, he's never taken a stim
I don't think
pack.
so. Yeah.
Dog meat's stim packed and Lucy's stim packed. Okay. All right. So Norm, my best friend. Yeah. So we see a lot of cuts of Norm having to give the Raiders meals and kind of being pissed about it. We get an overhead intercom statement by Betty that everybody's getting their assignments to repopulate Vault 32. And in the next scene, Norm walks into the jail cell and all the raiders are dead.
Some are being carted out.
Yep.
Some are still flopped over.
They're all
on
pale and yep.
And you know what, guys? I had no recall of this scene. I was like, the raiders are dead. So it's been a while since I watched the show because I didn't remember that they had died from mysteriously rat poison and they're carting away the lady who's just like sitting there that Norm gave her the Jell-O cake a couple episodes ago, who's just like the person that observes them in their cell, I guess. And she's like, I would never do that. And I'm just shocked that they didn't frame Norm for this.
Yeah.
I just don't get it.
Rat poisoning in the food. Someone in the food supply chain did it.
I'm wondering if Betty just knows if she frames him, the whole vault will go up in arms because he's the son of Overseer MacLean.
Yeah, it definitely seems like they're like, we can't harm him, but we can sideline him. We can make him impotent and just keep him on the shelf as best as we can. And it seems like what they're trying to do.
Yeah, if they move directly against him, he would have more reason to actively fight them. He's been fairly passive and subdued, so they couldn't just go after him.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they know he's smart, so it would be a bad idea to like come after somebody who knows everything there is to know about this vault.
Yeah, and then Betty throws out that really like sinister, words have meaning.
You caused this, Norm. And then she decides in that moment, Betty does, to turn her Pip-Boy and assign everybody's vault in that moment because she's assigning some people to Vault 32 and some to 33, and she made all of those choices herself.
Which would obviously mean that they're talking about that instead of the previous news cycle.
It was a good calculated decision, I feel like. Norm is staying in Vault 33.
Yep. I love while they're giving out the assignments and they cut to Chet and Steph and the baby. Chet's sitting there doing dishes. Steph is just putting an ice pack down her pants. It's like, is that because of Chet or because of delivering the baby? Like, just the look on her face, like, ugh, like.
Maybe both, John. Maybe both. But she just gave birth.
Yeah,
I mean, it's only probably been a week or so, a couple of weeks, maybe.
It was just a funny touch they put in there. It's like,
Yeah.
It really is. They have a lot of those good moments. And one thing I like about this scene, too, is that you kind of know you've been introduced to many of the characters in Vault 33, kind of in passing, but still. And so you're just as invested as everyone else is in, like, who's going where. And Chet and Stephanie get assigned to Vault 32, and Norm is staying in Vault 33. So Norm goes to visit Chet and Steph. I do have a clip for that, but it is funny when Steph opens the door and she's like holding the baby. It's like so obvious to me, like who's running the show in that family. Yeah. So let's listen to that.
Oh, hi, Norm. Oh, it's just terrible about the Raiders, isn't it? Don't be too long. I'm holding the baby, so you have to pack everything. We'll miss you, Norm.
You're going too?
Yeah. Steph and I were given a starter home unit. Just the three of us.
Oh. So you're just gonna forget about everything we've seen?
I feel like this is a good moment for a fresh start.
You think so?
Someone obviously does.
Chet.
You're a coward. You know that, Chet?
We all are, Norm. That's why we live in a vault.
Damn.
Good line. Very good line.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think this is where Chet's lost his innocence a little bit, right? And he's made a decision, whether it's good or bad, and Norm loses the only other person in the vault who knows what he knows, kind of in this scene. So Norm has now basically become completely isolated and doesn't have any friends to rely on.
Mm-hmm.
And next, is the Ghoul
Yeah.
and Cooper Howard kind of mixed up. So the Ghoul shows up at the Red Rocket gas station and he's so fucking creepy, but like, why do I like him so much? He's such a bad guy. He's like, looks down, he's been kind of tracking and he sees some blood and he puts his finger in it and then he goes, blah, 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 and he licks it. So gross. I didn't realize how many like cannibal references there were to the Ghoul, but there is a lot. Like, obviously he eats people because everybody knows he eats people. And then he hears dog meat and he finds dog meat in the cooler. This is like, you know that he's a dog person just from how he like pets dog meat and then he goes, all right, let's go find your daddy.
Yep.
But like, the way that he like rubs dog meat, you're just like, obviously you love dogs. Like, stop pretending. And it transitions from that moment where it's obvious that he's falling in love with dog meat a little bit to Cooper sitting with his dog Roosevelt and contemplating the listening device that he got. And he decides in that moment to go over to his wife's Pip-Boy that's sitting on the countertop, and he connects his little listening device to the Pip-Boy, which is kind of like a cool Bluetoothy kind of thing that happens. And how did he even know that it would do that?
I mean, he was in the military. He's like, yeah, like I'm sure he's dealt with stuff like that before, as far as at least Pip-Boys, you know. There was one built into his power armor.
Okay. Then his wife arrives and he quickly like puts it down and she's like, I have hot chocolate, 2 with marshmallows and 1 without. And you know that Cooper's the one with the marshmallow and his kid's the one with the marshmallows. Like, he's a marshmallow on the inside. That's why I still like the Ghoul.
And he does the lamest, like, cover your actions by just responding in the lamest way possible. Like, oh, 1's for me.
I'm stating the obvious. And he's listening to his wife talk to his daughter, and he's like, what was I thinking? You can see it in his brain.
Roosevelt was also like, what were you thinking?
Yeah, he's whining behind him. And so he throws the listening device in the trash. And he's like, I'm not going to mistrust my wife, Moldaver.
Yeah.
But then it cuts to him watching TV and watching his own commercial. And you can see in the deep of night when you're smoking a cigarette, you can contemplate things a little bit differently.
Walton Goggins could smoke the shit out of a cigarette, too. He's like...
And so he runs out to the trash and starts digging through it. And he goes under his breath, no dogs in the vault, huh? And then he kisses his puppy whoopee dog. And so he gets the listening device again. It cuts to the Ghoul. He's sitting next to Dog Meat and he goes, I'm sorry, Dog Meat, but you ain't him.
Aww. It's not your fault, Dog Meat. Don't listen to his words.
Also, we all know that, yes, every dog isn't the dog you had before, but you fall in love with that new dog over time. So, yeah.
Exactly. In my mind now, it's like headcanon that he had an option to be in the vault when the bombs fell, but he couldn't be with Roosevelt, so he didn't go into one. Gotta stay with Roosevelt. But it's such a cute scene. It's definitely establishing the relationship between the Ghoul and the dog, even though I want it to be between Lucy and the dog, but she'll get there, I guess.
The problem is that Lucy's kind of a golden retriever, and you can't have too many dogs on the screen.
That's true.
It's true. She is sort of like a golden retriever, but her demeanor changes throughout the show.
It's true.
And we get a very quick cut of Max and Lucy like walking towards the radio, and then we see Thaddeus just chilling by the severed head. And he's talking to Carl, which is Fred Armisen. And apparently he made it through a huge bunch of booby traps to sit next to him. And John, did you want to talk about Fred Armisen as the DJ?
I don't know. He's fun. I just don't like Fred Armisen most of the time. I mean, he falls he falls into like the Chevy Chase, David Cross, like there's a group of comedians who are, usually very well loved. It's like, I just don't like these guys. And it's not that I don't think they're not funny. I can appreciate they're funny. It's like, I just don't think I would like this person if I hung out with them. And so, I don't know, Fred Armisen, not as bad as like obviously a Chevy Chase. I don't know, for some reason I'm softening on David Cross a little bit, but same thing ever since I first saw him, like, I just don't like this guy, man. I don't know what it is. I kind of have that with
Will Forte.
Yeah,
I'm softening on him.
Yeah.
I don't think I would like Chris Farley as a person.
Oh, yeah?
So.
I think I'd like him better than David Spade. But yeah, just one of those things where you have comedians you like and comedians you don't. And Fred Armisen's like, I also don't think Portlandia is funny. I don't know. For as much as
That's because you don't live here.
Maybe that's why I left. I didn't think Portlandia was great.
Well, and Zach Galifianakis is kind of like that with me.
I can see that.
Yep.
Where it's sort of like, I get why other people think this is funny, and there's some stuff that's funny. Mm-hmm. Like when he's in an actual movie, I think it's funny, but his comedy is like, I am definitely more of like a smart comedy or like body comedy. Mm-hmm. Like, for example, Key and Peele is like everything to me. It's both smart and just like they do so much physical comedy. Basically, Fred Armisen is just like flat a lot of the time, and there's not like, he plays some sort of active role, but it just, when you look in his eyes, I'm like, is there a nice person in there? Like, I can't see anything from his eyes,
Yeah, and
he just seems flat.
And that's for sure part of it. But with this role, like, I have no problem with him in this role. It's supposed to be a humorous scene because he's talking about, oh no, this is why I like fiddle music, but people don't, so I had to build these deadly booby traps. See, this is the part of the fiddle song I like. He delivers it like it's funny. It is a funny scene.
So like music snobs that I've met before. And like, you also know that he doesn't know something that we know. So we can sort of laugh at the snob because he thinks the original violins had the artifact sound. And he's like, you can't get that anymore.
Yep.
These are the original recordings. It's like, we all, if we have a certain amount of knowledge, can tell that that's all bullshit. And he's just a music snob.
Yeah, I mean, I could take it or leave it. I think anybody could have been in that role. It didn't have to be Fred Armisen.
Yeah.
He just is playing sort of that Wizard of Oz character where like he opens the door and like then he closes the door.
And he opens a little hatch. I like the little radios. KPSS is on a little solid iron hatch over the door. Like, oh, that's cool. So they were ready before the bombs fell. Like, oh yeah, this was a hardened radio station in preparation for the atomic war.
I feel like in this universe, there would be more of those kinds of places because in that very first episode, you see that dad running into his mini fallout shelter and like keeping other people out of it when the bombs fall. So I think there were people back in my parents' time that were creating these fallout shelter type places, and schools had fallout shelters in their basements. So it was something that people were legitimately preparing for in the 1950s. It's kind of a silly scene. Like, all the Thaddeus scenes are cute. I like these nerdy kids. Like, I like Norm. I like Thaddeus. They're my bros. I mean, not that you are kind of nerdy. That's what I love. So I feel like they're my friends.
So I have a question for the both of you. If you were in the wasteland and you had a wacky wasteland job, like being a DJ, what do you think you would be?
Wacky wasteland job. I feel like I'd be a cult leader.
I'd have like a caravan of Brahmin, like traveling library bookmobile, but in
the broken spine on wheels.
There we go. Exactly.
I'd be like one of those plant cult leaders. I'd find a like grove of green space, and then I'd like make everybody wear robes.
Yes.
I mean, that fits with what was his name? Bob in Fallout 3 and Fallout
The Tree?
The Tree.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Harold.
Thank you. Harold.
My favorite NPC of all time.
Exactly.
Yeah. I would be one of his followers, or I would create my own following, and then you'd randomly find people dead in like the Marcy's Rose Cult or something.
Beautiful.
How about you, Paul?
You know the guy in Firefly who's like, they can't stop the signal, Mal?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
I'd be that. Yeah. I'd have my little fortress of technology, and I'd be sending out messages everywhere, and no one would get them.
Nice.
So basically, you'd be a DJ.
Yeah.
But not over radio waves.
Yeah.
The engine room, but in Fallout. Yep.
The engine, yes. That is a deep cut.
All right, so Thaddeus sees Max and Lucy arriving, and Fred Armisen's character is like, oh, are these friends of yours? And then Thaddeus stands up and just starts shooting.
And this is where he's not a great squire, or the Brotherhood is not good at teaching marksmanship.
So I have that clip here.
God, I suck without a scope.
We just want the head.
Who are you?
I'm the person who cut it off.
Okay,
There's an arrow in his neck.
Oh. Why am I not dead?
The whistle.
I wouldn't do that.
Well, I'm not just gonna leave it there.
Ew.
Oh.
No.
Oh. Oh.
Magically healing.
Thaddeus, I think you might be a ghoul.
What?
Oh, no.
I love it. Right after his "oh no" is, I never should have trusted a doctor that smelled like that. But I love that you got the part of where I suck without a scope, because it's like, yep, if you have played Fallout and you're doing just iron sights or something, like, yep, it's real hard to hit stuff sometimes if you don't have a scope.
He didn't have VATS to go into to aim.
Yeah, that's true. I would also like to point out to anyone who's curious and listening that we are not watching the video clips while we play it. We're playing the audio and just remembering the moments. So Marcy's, that's like her amazing imagination.
Yeah. I do have to credit them. It's like, yep, there's an arrow on his vocal cords, so he's going to be a little rattly when he talks with it. Like, ugh, gross.
Yep.
Gross. So well done.
It's very well done. This does remind me of a character in a show that I recently started watching called Ghosts. It's the American version of Ghosts. And there's a ghost in this show that has an arrow through its neck. Because he was a Boy Scout leader, and one of the Boy Scouts accidentally killed him by shooting him through the neck. So he has to live eternity with an arrow through his neck. It's pretty funny.
Nice.
So the moment I saw that arrow through the neck, I was like, pictured him as a nerdy Boy Scout leader.
Nice. When he pulled it out, I don't know about you guys, but one of the hardest things for me ever is pulling splinters out of my skin. I used to have to get drunk to pull it out.
Oh, wow.
It's very bodily autonomy violating feeling to me, just feeling the thing going through your body. So as I was watching him pulling it out, I was like, oh, that's got to be so much worse.
So Thaddeus starts freaking out because he's got the head and he sees a vertibird coming and he's like, the Brotherhood's coming, oh my god. And Max is like, just give me the head and you'll get a head start, get out of here. And, it is nice to see that Max and Thaddeus make up a little bit here in this scene.
It's also funny because Lucy is like, but they're the good guys, right? Everything's good and cool and great. And they're both just like,
And this is where we're reminded that the Brotherhood is basically murder all things that are affected by radiation, which means that, sorry, Vault 4, if Brotherhood comes across you, they're going to murder everybody in Vault 4. And so Thaddeus does give Max the head and runs off. I know that Paul made kissy noises in the previous scene, but actually this is the first time that, weirdly, Max and Lucy kiss. So Max decides he's going to make a fake head out of one of the bodies that's just lying around from the booby traps. And so he smashes the fake head's face. And he's like, you gotta get out of here, Lucy. Take the head and find your dad. And I don't know why I sound like Katharine Hepburn just then, but
and she's like,
that's
find me in Vault 3.
And she's like, no, I can't leave you. And then they kiss for the first time, and it was a really sweet kiss. I thought it looked sexy enough, but not like gross.
Did you catch the other kiss that was happening at the
two
same time?
Heads,
though?
right? Yeah.
Yes. So they're both, one each is holding a head, and the two heads kind of kiss at the same time. And all of this like funny, gross humor is why we love Fallout.
Yes.
Armisen is creepily watching everything that's happening and like having
appreciating
facial
the
expressions.
kiss. Yeah, it's like, oh, it's a good kiss.
Yeah.
All right.
Then that's the end of that scene. And the final scene, we move on to Norm. So Betty is sending all of the civilians to their various vaults. All the people from 33 are kind of standing around 32's vault door. And one of the three guys that had been vying for Overseer has been sent to Vault 32, and he starts freaking out, and he's like, I don't want to go, and runs off. And the vault security from 33 stop him, and he realizes that he has to just give in and go to Vault 32. Yeah. So we kind of see that there's some sinister stuff underneath the surface of Vault 33. Not that we didn't already know that, but Norm is kind of watching all of this. Betty decides to talk about who's going to be stand-in overseer for Vault 32. And she says, the High Council has decided. Did you guys notice that term, High Council? So, I mean, I obviously watched the show, so I know probably who she's talking about. But again, this is a clue that something else is going on here, because there's not a overseer for 32. So who is this High Council that she's talking about?
Yeah. And the group of overseers for 33 is pretty much effectively disbanded at this point. So it was like, yeah, wait, who are we talking about here? And yeah.
Exactly. And maybe Norm picks up on this.
Yeah.
So Stephanie has been chosen as the overseer of Vault 32, and you can tell she's just super thrilled about this. She's like, yes.
She's a solid choice.
Finally.
Yeah.
Also, the worst word in the English language was used in Betty's speech here. I know that it's my personal opinion, but every time I hear a goddamn American say stick-to-itiveness, it's like, we have words that say perseverance. We have words for grit. Like, there are shorter words that say more and have more value.
Nice. It's true. Yeah. It's a stupid word. We like to mash words together here in America.
Yes, we do.
We actually have a word for it. It's called portmanteaus. Yeah. And all of the chosen ones for Vault 32 enter Vault 32, and you kind of see them standing there, and then the Vault 32 door closes, and Norm's like, fuck this. He's power walking through the corridors back to Vault 33 Overseer office, and this is where we get some hackings.
Is this our first hacking of the series?
It is, and it looks just like the Fallout 4 hacking.
It does.
And Paul is going to do his lesson in lore on hacking.
Yeah, so I kind of wanted to start this off with a question to you two. Do you guys have like a hacking minigame that you think of when you think of hacking minigames?
I mean, besides Fallout, God. There's definitely one where you're like connecting hoses for a fluid to go through. What the hell game was that?
So you've got the Bioshock
one. Thank you. Yeah.
Yep. So in that one, you have pipes from the source to the end, and you rotate along the way. And if you have it rotate to the wrong way, you're kind of screwed. As it gets harder, it becomes impossible.
Yep.
The first hacking minigame I ever played. Oh, Marcy, did you have one, or did you just want to pass?
Well, I was trying to think. I feel like there's another one that has like tiles where you're like turning tiles, but I feel like that might also be Bioshock. I'm trying to think. Hacking.
I know another one.
Go for it.
Mass Effect. They when you're trying to break into terminals, you got to match different patterns that they display, and you have a certain amount of time to match the patterns.
Oh yeah.
Yep. So there are tons. The first one that I believe I ever played was in a game called Enter the Matrix.
It was a good game. It was a very good game.
It was a fun game. Yeah. I was always just like sweep and knock to the ground.
Yep.
But on the side, you could do this little kind of fake MS-DOS, like Microsoft DOS terminal, where you like go to the A drive and then like, what's the thing for what's on the drive? And it's mostly just a password guessing game. It's very immersive and looks like you're hacking, but it's not particularly hackery. Another one that I wanted to call out just because it was strategic and fun is the Deus Ex Human Revolution one, where you basically have a starting node and it sort of looks like a network map with like this stack of things represents like the security protocols and like this thing's like your spam filter. And so you like click the one that you want to go to and you eventually will guaranteed hack it. It's just how long it takes. And if you go the stealth route, then like the defenders never find you and you can get your goal and get your 100 credits or whatever. But if you do trigger the authorities, then they're starting to hack in reverse to you. And then it's like time based. You're like, oh God, I gotta hack this, that, the other. So that one was fun. Very much not hacking. What is hacking? Have you ever found a password on a Post-it note and accessed something that way? That is technically legally hacking. Have you ever known someone's password because your spouse, significant other said, hey, this is my password, and then used it without asking them? That's technically hacking.
I tried to do that this morning, actually.
Marcy, you're a hacker.
Because I was like, I need to get into Andrew's Amazon account, and he has this old password, which I'm obviously not going to say online. But like
it's probably
that he's
cat's
had for
butthole.
20 that he's had for like 20 years. That's very secure. And I couldn't get it right. And I was like, damn it, it's still really good. Even though I've memorized it before, I must have missed like one of the thousands of numbers he has.
Good job, Andrew. Another thing that is technically legally considered hacking is if you go to the URL on your browser and you change something there. If you change the wrong thing, you're basically saying like, hey, if it says your username there and you change the username, people have been sent to prison for changing it to someone else's username and breaking into the system that way.
Wow.
So like there's lots of things that are considered hacking that are not glamorous or glorious or even that hard to do. Yeah, so the thing that you're probably thinking of when you think of hacking is brute force techniques, which is literally just try all the possibilities. And the more you can narrow down what those possibilities are, the faster you're going to be. So like if the password system says that we only take alphabetical and numerical characters, you don't need any of like the exclamation mark or stuff like that. Special characters, exactly. I think it gets more into like rainbow tables when you have like extra things. But like, yeah, there's giant files that you can download if you're into this kind of thing so that you can check every possible password on this one thing that you're getting into.
Nice.
And more sophisticated techniques, involve like getting a Kali Linux machine and then like learning through network scanning, like you can sort of ping computers in the network and they can reveal based on like what port responds, what kind of service it is. Cause like Windows has, like SMB servers is how you share printer devices. So you can learn, oh, this is Windows and it's printers. You can get a lot of clues that way. And if you ever find enough, you can just start like, hey, I suspect that this is a Windows 2000 server. Let's look at all of the exploits that exist for that. And then, just run this little script that anybody can do on your Kali Linux box with the payload that you want. And boom, now you're in charge of that computer.
So I was helping my mom buy a new computer and I was asking her some questions and I'm like, well, show me your computer. She's like, yeah. So she has a super old laptop and she's like, when I get done, I remove the battery. Am I going to be able to get a computer where I can remove the battery? And I was like, and she's like, I do it because your dad told me that people wouldn't be able to get into my computer with removing the battery. And I'm like, probably that's the best thing that you can do.
Yeah, you can't hack a computer that's not on. So, yeah.
Yeah, or doesn't have power to it.
One of the first things they teach you in computer security classes is that It's a trade-off between accessibility and security, and the most secure system you can ever have is like sealed up in concrete at the bottom of the ocean with no cords connecting it to anything.
Well, my mom's getting close.
She's got some security.
That's pretty good. Good OPSEC on her. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, sorry, I don't think you can remove laptop batteries anymore.
You're
Like, at least not
have
that
to,
easily.
Like, find a system that specifically does configurable. I also just wanted to call out that the U.S. government and the Israeli government used basically lots and lots of money to ruin the centrifuge systems
for Iran.
Yes,
Iran, Stuxnet.
in Iran. Yep, Stuxnet. And the people who have been interviewed and said, I had nothing to do with it, nobody had anything to do with it, but I think it was a good idea. They're all fucking assholes because Stuxnet tech has been used by other hackers to fuck with everyone else nowadays. They basically upped the game and made it so that like anybody could have access to government level hacking worms. And also they used the code for Stuxnet as some of the background stuff in Star Trek Discovery's Context is for Kings and also Pyre in The Expanse. So it's so available that it's now just shown on movies.
Just on TV and movies. Wow.
Thanks, Paul. Whenever I have you do this, my mind is blown by something that you say. The simplest thing where you're like, oh, you're hacking if you know somebody's password. I'm like, duh. Okay.
Also, the most guaranteed hacking technique is called rubber hose cryptography. And that's where you beat someone with a rubber hose until they tell you the password.
Torture. Which we learned earlier is a bad thing.
It is bad.
So Norm easily hacks into this overseer computer and he starts sending messages to the overseer in Vault 31 because he wants to get in there and find out what's going on because he knows all the overseers have been chosen from Vault 31. And he convinces this, whatever it is on the end of the message line, to open up the door for Vault 31.
It's probably a death claw, right?
Probably a death claw. So he stands in front of the door shouting at it. It opens. So that's maybe a first clue that maybe there's not an actual person back there, just saying. And he goes in, and I feel like this is a really similar scene to the scene we got last episode where Lucy is going through the corridors of level 12 in Vault 4. So again, this connection between siblings. So he's like wandering the corridors, and then he hears the sound of what sounds like mechanical steps. Kind of sounds like power armor to me when I heard it. And then his face gets kind of quizzical, and that's the end of the episode.
Cliffhanger.
The cliffhanger. Part 2 coming up, the end of the season.
I like this episode. I mean, I don't think there's an episode of Fallout that I really didn't enjoy. And, you know, like I said, this one's gotten some criticism. I was like, no, let's show some love. Because, man, a lot of stuff, not big important events happen in this, but small important events happen in this all the time.
Like you said originally when we started the episode, it moves the storylines along to where they need to be for the finale episode. And you get to learn things about the wasteland, things about every single one of the characters that we found to be important. So I like this episode. I feel like this was more interesting to me than I think 2 episodes ago was kind of my most boring episode. So yeah, I loved it, and I'm super excited for the next step. What about you, Paul?
I love Thaddeus. This is a Thaddeus episode, so I love it.
Yeah, Thaddeus he's great on screen every time. You know, we've seen him go from, like, they've taken him from just one of the bullies at the camp to being like, well, yeah, we picked on him because I was the one who was picked on. Like, that's just the way it goes. You pick on the next person who shows up, kind of thing. To this, like, it's going to be fun to see where Thaddeus goes for season 2.
Hell yeah.
I wonder if he'll become a mentee of the Ghoul.
I hope so. That's
turning
exactly
into
what
a
I'm
Ghoul.
hoping for. Like, yeah.
Baby Ghoul.
Yep.
Baby Ghoul. All right, John. Well, thanks for joining us. Why don't you take a second to talk about what's coming up for you?
On Open Pike Night, my Star Trek Strange New Worlds podcast, we are in the middle of reviewing season 2 of Star Trek Discovery, where we first met Captain Pike and Una and Spock, all from Strange New Worlds. And then we are also getting ready to record a coverage of Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock, as part of a bigger multi-podcast host event that you'll hear more about as the days go on, or depending on when this episode comes out, it might already be out. That happens in January. And then on
probably.
And then on Green Shirt and Newbies Trek Through the Next Generation, Cam is just about ready to finish up the final few episodes of TNG and head into the reviewing the movies. So we're having a good time on both those podcasts. Yeah.
Amazing.
By the time this comes out, I'll probably have already arrived. I'm kind of doing a secret guest host for this upcoming episode of theirs. So.
It's going to be fun.
Wow.
Yep. Yeah.
So the next episode is the beginning. And if you want to keep listening, go ahead and say hello to us on our social medias at Idle Ride or Idle Ride Podcast. No longer on Twitter X, but you can find us at Blue Sky and Threads and Instagram. And hopefully you've already rated and reviewed and given us the highest rating that you can on all of the apps that you listen to the show on. All right. Thank you very much. Talk to you later.
Podcasting never changes.
Bye.